We've just got to the end of the live questioning of Alison, the woman who was deceived into a long-term interrelationship by Mark Jenner, who she knew was Mark Cassidy, an undercover police officer who infiltrated the Colin Roach Centre, infiltrating anti-racist, anti-fascist groups and trade union activists. This afternoon's testimony has been incredibly powerful. Alison finished with a very stirring statement, which covered a lot of things. I'm joined, as I often am, with Evelyn Lubbers of the Undercover Research Group. Evelyn, what do you make of what we heard from Alison today?
Well, so many things to say. She was indeed extremely powerful. She is a teacher, so she knows how to speak. She knows how to sort of, give words to her feelings. And what you can also see is that she analyzed her experiences on so many levels. She worked through it, and that she is able to go from the personal to the, to how things are for all the women, for all the people who've been spied upon, and even for the undercovers. And in her speech, she started with a quote from Shakespeare, which turns out to be the way into meeting, because he really liked it and he had to think about it, and he thanked her really, really very explicit. And what can I say? She has so many stories we could repeat here, but she was very good at explaining how desperate she felt when Mark Jenner left her, how that made her sort of bit by bit made her decide to go and find him, and she found him in the end, maybe a bit with the help of other stories that came out at the same time, which made her realize that her story was not the only one. She wasn't crazy as all her family had told her. And in fact, she kind of, not confronted him, but she found out through his Facebook page that she still knew, or that she found because she found out his real name, where he was going to do a walk in Scotland. And it
was the Pennine Way.
And she found the hotel that he stayed at and called him up. And his first reaction was, at first she said, don't you recognize my voice? And then what he said was, how the fuck do you know where I am?
She talked in a great amount of detail after we'd kind of got through the latter part of his deployment when we first came back from lunch. And she talked in great detail about what she said was like an uncredited PhD that she did in the security services, of how she became obsessed, and she tracked very extensively anything that she could. I'd followed down every trail to find out who he really was and what was really going on. She said that it was 2000. It was the April of 2000 when she left. He left. She talked about how that that very manipulative way in which he left, so similar to so many other officers. She pointed out how it was like the letters were like a template. But then it was by 2003 when she met up with Helen Steele, she was convinced he was a special branch officer. Which turned out to be the case. And then for the next 8 years, she continued to dig into that before that was finally confirmed in 2011. And she talked about how so many people didn't believe her, how her father only believed it when it was written up by men in the newspaper, and the way that the press kind of confirmed it, made it real as far as he was concerned. And she paid a lot of tribute to the other people who have been doing similar things. She talked about Helen Steele trying to trace down John Dines, and it was and working with Lisa after the exposure of Mark Kennedy that led them to do the civil claim, which really brought a lot of this stuff to everybody's attention. And
what was really special is that she also paid tribute to the woman who we know as S, who will give evidence tomorrow. It was the real wife of Mark Jenner, and it turns out they apparently they got divorced, but she has built a very special relationship with the wife, which is also incredible.
And I would just say that there were no breaches this afternoon. So that audio file, which is in the description of this, what we're reacting to, it's unbroken. You'll be able to hear all the evidence that Alison gave this afternoon. And there was so much detail. My reports, I try my very best to report everything that happens, but there was so much detail this time that there's a lot of things that I didn't manage to get down in time. She's a very professional speaker. Alison is a school teacher by trade. So she's very eloquent in delivering and including a lot of detail in what she says. One thing which really, really struck out to me, and I thought was very powerful, and something which kind of resonates with me a lot, is that when she was asked to explain how she feels, how it's affected her, she talked about not wanting to give the sadist gratification to Mark Jenner, she knew was Mark Cassidy, and the other officers and the managers, that they get some sort of gratification out of the pain they have caused to people, and that she didn't want to add into that. So while she was quite happy to talk about the impact there and then, that she doesn't do that normally, and for me that resonates incredibly powerfully. I think that's a key reason, I think, why a lot of us don't go on about how much we've been personally affected by these deployments, because we don't want to give them the gratification. I thought that really stood out for me a lot.
Yeah. And in her final statement, after which we all got up and applauded. Oh no, we didn't get up. She also made a plea to Mark Jenner, but other undercover officers as well, which coincidentally I did earlier today in a tweet as well. Like, come forward and don't be a coward, and just tell your end of the story. It's all, it's all out in the open now. It can't get any worse. We've heard so much, but it might give some closure for yourself and for policing in general, to just come out with the truth and not let us sit through days and days of evidence of undercover officers who just can't remember, can't recall, don't want to say it, are obviously lying. Come clean, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. During we were taking through a lot of his reports. And it was more about the omission, really, within the reports. The fact that basically he never reported on Alison, despite the fact that he was living with her full time, despite the fact that she was a very active member of the Colin Roach Centre. He's like, his inability to mention her. It's obvious. It's obviously done intentionally to just keep out the fact that he was in a relationship with her, but also it showed how he reported almost exclusively on the men. She talked about how he tried to sow discord between women within the group, telling her that another female member of the group had made a pass at him, something that she fell out with this woman about for many, many years. Really
wasn't true in the end, of course. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and it was just that the role that Mark Cassidy took, Mark Jenner took within the group, he wrote himself out of it. That he actually did, he steered the group in various ways. He was an active part of the decision-making process. But if you look at his reports, he's missing. She also said that many of the people who attended meetings, who were very quiet, very rarely spoke, were reported as saying things. And she's like, well, I would have spoken at those meetings. I've never mentioned. And she wonders if things that she said, things that he said, were actually being attributed to other people who were attending the meetings who didn't actually speak.
Yeah, we've seen that before as well in Bob Lambert's reports, also omitting the women, and also putting all kinds of deeds in their hands, which they hadn't committed. There's no way you can trust these reports. It's fantasy, it's lies. But the point is that people, if they get mentions, their name is in the report. After 5 or 6 mentions, you get a registry file from special branch, which may follow you for the rest of your life. So it's not just like, oh, this is a funny fantasy unit. They actually do a lot of damage to people in the rest of their lives.
Yeah, massive. And I think when we look at so many of the reports, she said just complete works of fiction. She talks about there's bits of the reports about him about moving house, and she's like, no, he was living with me through this time period. There was stuff about her being in a relationship with Bert. She's like, somebody we know as Bert. That was never the case. There's sort of there's this very fictionalized version of events. We saw the reports from when she was trying to find him. She rang up Terry, who was his cover employer, and that's been reported on. In that report, it says that she was the girlfriend of Mark Metcalf, which obviously she never was. And that, but it's just like the idea that the managers wouldn't have known that he was in a relationship with her. I mean, either they knew full well and were part of covering it up, or they didn't know, and that means they're completely incompetent and also completely stupid. Why would this woman be so interested in trying to find him after he disappeared if there wasn't something serious going on between them? She just rejects outright the idea that the managers didn't know at all. It just doesn't make any sense, and it really doesn't.
Yeah, would anyone who is interested in this advise to listen to the YouTube feed? There's no images because she has anonymity, or read it because it's very powerful. And even we were talking about it, even though I've known her for years, I've known the story for years, I've heard so many parts, I've seen loads of the pictures and the videos. To see it all together, it brings home the idiocy of this entire operation. Like the video, to see the videos in the context of the reporting, seeing him living like a relaxed life, being cooked for, have a warm house, and then like he said, he would, if he said he was going to work like early in the morning, 6 o'clock, he would go home to his wife, and if he would, and then when he told his wife he was going to work, he was back to her. So and then and that contrasting her like very honest, very deeply felt, and very analytic testimony, contrast that with what undercover officers deliver here themselves and try to get out of by saying they're deeply traumatized. If you see those videos of like Mark Jenner falling through a chair, it's like it's so the opposite of all the reasons they have found to not appear here, to get anonymity, to not be called. It's it was a very, very impressive day.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that, I mean, this is the busiest the public gallery has ever been. I mean, certainly as big as it's been since the inquiry first opened. Some of the very early sessions had like 60 odd people there, but I mean, this was on a par. Not just her friends and family and those of us who regularly go to the inquiry hearings, but lots of other people who've been affected by deployments. Who, I mean, as we've said before, Alison has really been a central character when it comes to Police Spies Out of Lives and the support given to other campaigns. I mean, at the very end, she paid tribute to a lot of those campaigners, and a lot of those were here today to support her. It was very emotional. I mean, myself personally, I felt it was a real fourth wall breaking moment because I'm so used to her being sat next to me, like making comments during the hearings, and having her actually on the stand and reacting to her. It felt like a culmination in a lot of ways of a lot of the things that we've been doing. So it was incredibly powerful. Is there anything else you want to say before we talk about it tomorrow?
No, it's enough.
So tomorrow we'll be hearing from S, who was Mark Jenner's wife at the time that Mark Jenner was deployed undercover and living with Alison. As we've heard, he was leaving Alison before 6 every morning. What he was doing was going home to his wife. He was staying with his wife for the full day, and then he was supposedly coming home from work at about 6 o'clock and coming home to Alison and just going back and forth between the two. It's going to be that'll be very interesting. After we hear from Steve Headley, who was one of the activists who Mark Jenner reported on. On Wednesday, we'll be hearing from Mark Metcalf, who we heard a lot about today, who was also one of those activists. And then on Thursday from Dr. Graham Smith. Next week, we'll be hearing from Mark Jenner himself, who has 4 days of questioning before the inquiry finishes for Christmas. Just one of the comments there that's and Martin Lowe, listening to her evidence has been a very powerful experience. And I think it really has. And I can't really stress that enough. I don't know how well it comes across just audio only, but like certainly seeing her there was, had huge impact. I really recommend people listen back to it if they're able to. I will do a Twitter Spaces later on today. I think there's so many people here today. I think we're all off to the pub for a little bit. So apologies if it's a bit later than usual. I say that I couldn't be more later than they have been in the last few. Those Twitter Spaces getting later. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow with S. See you all then. Bye for now.